Hello and welcome to this special edition of UMTV. I'm your host Sabrina Ullman, and I will spend the next half hour telling you all about Burmese python hunting in the Everglades. From why these snakes are hunted to what happens after they are caught, this is Python Pursuit. From the outside, the Everglades seem like a vast area of nothingness, just grassy water. It's actually known as the River of Grass, but a closer look reveals that it's so much more than that. The area known as the Everglades stretches across central and south Florida, spreading over 1.5 million acres. The water within the glades is overflow from Lake Okeechobee, coming from the Kissimmee River near Orlando. The wetlands act as a natural filtration system, supplying drinking water to 1/3 of Floridians, around 8 million people. The area also retains and controls floodwaters, irrigates much of the state's agriculture, and provides a habitat not only for a lot of the fish we eat, but also for migratory birds, other fish, and mammals. The Everglades National Park alone is home to more than 360 bird species.
This area itself is comprised of marshes as well as some hardwoods. It has some different habitats in it. So an area in the Everglades supports species such as small mammals, raccoons, opossums, supports a lot of wading birds, all kinds of duck populations, and they're coming here and they're breeding and they're nesting and they're living here in the Everglades. Some of the larger predators or prey species in the state that they may support would be panthers, bear, and coyotes. And then we also have the large mammal populations such as deer, white-tailed deer, as well as hog.
In addition to wildlife, the Everglades have been inhabited by humans for around 15,000 years. The area remained virtually unchanged until the 1800s. Despite being vital to not only wildlife, but also millions of people, the Everglades suffered a significant destruction in the hands of mankind. People started building canals there in the late 19th century. Then, in 1947, the Central and Southern Florida Flood Control Project began creating 1,400 miles of canals, levees, and water control devices. At the same time, the Miami metropolitan area began expanding, and water from the Everglades was diverted to the growing city. And so, more land was cleared to make room for farms, especially sugarcane.
The area itself has changed. I mean, size and structure has changed, water flow has changed some. You know, you have to remember that this area is not only managed by FWC for certain aspects such as recreation, hunting, fishing, boating access, but you also have South Florida Water Management District that manages water flow. You have Everglades National Park that borders this area. So collectively, there's a lot of managing agencies.
All these changes had a negative effect on the Everglades, and the result is that the ecosystem is only half the size it once was. Restoration efforts began in 1973 after Congress declared that the federal government is responsible for protecting endangered and threatened species and critical habitat. The comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan that passed in 2000 dedicated almost $8 billion of federal resources to repair the glades over a 30-year period of time. So now, construction projects are underway. Water is being rerouted, and more recently, biologists have figured out another way to protect the Everglades. For the past few decades, several highly invasive species have been taking over the South Florida ecosystem. Those include iguanas, lionfish, and some types of fern, to name just a few. Invasive or non-native species cause serious damage to any habitat they don't belong to and threaten to destroy it.
Florida has the most invaders of plants, of animals, of snails, of bugs, like we're like the invasive capital of the world, And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be, it's not going to be good.
There are over 100 invasive species in this area. One of the worst is the Burmese python, a massive snake with no natural predator in the Everglades. The question is, how did a snake from Southeast Asia wind up here?
What we likely suspect is that they came from the pet trade and were either an escaped pet or a released pet. And we have documentations for pythons all the way back to the 1980s here in South Florida.
They came in from the pet trade. They didn't sprout wings and fly here themselves. They came in through the pet trade.
And while there is nothing wrong with owning legal exotic pets, Burmese pythons can grow very large, and that has led to many people simply dumping their enormous pets into the Everglades, where the snakes have now taken over.
It's hard to get a population estimate in an ecosystem such as this. Pythons are semi-aquatic, so this is a great ecosystem for them to survive in, with all of the water, the marshland, great food sources for them. You know, the general rule of thumb of pythons is they have about a 1% detection rate. So for every 100 snakes, you're seeing one. So for a lot of variety of different reasons, we just don't have a firm population estimate. We know that they're here, we know that they're established, we know that they're breeding and reproducing.
Since pythons are an invasive species, they disrupt the ecosystem. They have no natural predators, so they are at the top of the food chain and are not afraid of attacking anything that comes their way.
They're eating the alligators, alligator eggs, turtles, you know, the raccoons, possums, anything they can get a hold of, and they will get a hold of it because they can go underwater, climb up trees, you know, they're expert hunters.
Pythons are constrictors, killing their prey by either wrapping themselves around it and crushing it or by swallowing it whole. And they have quite an appetite because of their large size. A 13-foot long python, for instance, takes 5 to 7 years to grow that big and consumes over 100 animals in the process.
We are seeing, and we have seen, a decline in the small mammal population that we have attributed to, in part, to the Burmese python.
You know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, these aren't captive bred snakes that are eating once a month or once every 2 months. They'll eat any chance they can get. I mean, they're very opportunistic out there, and it's not uncommon to find one with 2 or 3 birds, I mean, literally back to back in its belly.
And though pythons don't usually attack humans, people are also suffering the consequences of the snakes taking over the Everglades. Because of pythons eating large mammals, now mosquitoes have had to find other hosts. And mosquitoes in the Everglades can carry a pathogen that causes one of the most severe mosquito-transmitted diseases in the United States. As they bite humans instead of other mammals, there is a risk of people getting the EEE virus, which has a 33% mortality rate according to the CDC. With the damage to the Everglades and the native species within it, the population of this invasive species must be controlled. Here's a look at what has been done so far.
He was sitting up like this.
Burmese pythons have been in Florida for decades, but it was not until recent years that any efforts were made to stop the species. In 2012, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service voted to ban the importation and interstate transportation of certain snakes that were negatively impacting the Everglades, including the Burmese python.
They are a conditional species, which means that you have to have a very specific permit to be in possession of them, but they're no longer able to be sold here in the state.
And just a few weeks ago, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission banned the ownership and commercial use of 16 non-native and invasive reptiles, including Burmese pythons.
What FWC is doing is really looking forward into the future and determining how we can best manage the issue with invasive species.
The Fish and Wildlife Commission has been exploring different ways to deal with the python issue. The Florida Python Challenge was created in 2013 to promote public involvement in removal efforts. It's a competition that gives prizes to participants who catch the most or the longest snakes. The challenge has been held a few times since then and will likely take place again this summer.
We've removed close to 500 snakes through those python challenges thus far, and in general, that's a mixed group of usually the general public who wants to get out there and try their hand at catching a python, and some of our contractors as well.
In addition to the python challenges, the FWC educates and engages the general public, such as teaching people how to capture snakes with the Python Patrol program.
Pre-COVID, we would do live python trainings where people would get to actually have hands-on and go through that training process. You shouldn't ever go out and just do it on your own for one time. You should educate yourself some on how these snakes work and what they do.
If someone sees a python and wants FWC to know its location, they can call 888-I've-GOT-ONE, go online at I'veGotOne.org, or download the free app by the same name.
You just drop a pin at your location, take a picture if you can take one, and let us know that it's there. And then we'll let staff know, or we'll let some of our contractors know, and then they can proceed forward with looking for that snake.
In addition to the app, the Python Challenge, and the Python Patrol program, the FWC works with South Florida Water Management to pay contractors to hunt python. Collectively, the FWC and South Florida Water Management hunters have caught over 6,000 Burmese pythons in the Everglades since the contractor program began in March 2017.
We created what is now the most successful management effort to date.
Because of the number of pythons in the Everglades and the success of the hunters so far, the state has put more money into the contractor programs in 2019.
Governor Ron DeSantis challenged us and our partnering agency, FWC, to essentially double our efforts. So we have gone to from 25 hunters, and now we have 50 paid contractors each. So FWC has 50 and we have 50, so that's 100 paid contractors out there. And we've also greatly expanded our project area.
The hunters get paid an hourly rate that is minimum wage or up to $15 an hour for certain areas. Additionally, for every snake caught, they receive $50 plus an extra $25 for each foot over 4 feet. Hunters spend hours upon hours trying to rid the Everglades of pythons. They learn from experience, and as I've found out, each one does things a little differently.
Just pick them up nice and pretty. It's an interesting occupation that I have. You know, you're basically leaving at sunset and you're going out to the middle of the Everglades and staying out to the middle of the night looking for giant snakes.
I was born and raised down here, so many years ago, you know, finding out about the python issue we had, me and a buddy of mine just started going out just on our own. We'd ride our bikes or walk some of the levees out there, and it was more just about to get out in the outdoors and getting out in the Everglades, but also, you know, trying to catch some pythons here and there. And
we're basically hunting the hunters. We're going out after them when they're moving. They're looking for food, and we're looking for them.
it's something you don't pick up on overnight. It's not rocket science, but it's not easy either.
Looking in the grass with the lights on and in the water, there's a big difference. And so you have to allow your eyes to be able to see both in the grass and in the water at the same time. And it's difficult. Your eyes do get tired pretty quickly. The areas that humans can't get to, they're free to roam. If you take a look out there, they can be pretty much everywhere. But the one thing is that they do need to come back to the levee system, to higher ground.
We got just a little 12-foot John boat, just a little 6 horsepower motor on there, and it gets us around. It allows us to hit up different spots and kind of get off the levees.
I have a team of volunteers that come out and help me spot pythons and remove them from the Everglades. Help me catch them when they're big.
Around when they're periscoping, there's going to be more of them right along here.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's always great to have volunteers with me. All right.
Boom.
Even a 12 or 13 footer, which isn't that big really, I mean, not to me, but if it's in the right mood, it's gonna give you a struggle.
It's always better to go with somebody. It's always safer and it's always better because the more people looking for them, the more pythons you'll catch. He's gonna turn around and bite me eventually.
As expected, there's some danger involved with hunting large snakes. They have big teeth and are not afraid to use them.
I mean, when you're handling, you know, a couple hundred, you know, of anything, you're gonna get bit at some point.
Hunter Donna Khalil got bit recently after catching a python that was about a year old. She was free holding the snake, admiring its beauty, while it was decently calm. Then the snake had a change in heart.
It was doing fine, didn't try to bite or anything. It was actually in pretty good condition, not really caring, and then all of a sudden it said, you know, I really want to leave, and that's what that is. It's like, I want to leave. I'll take a bite out of you and see if that helps me get out of here. Well, it didn't. He's in the bag and we're taking him out of here.
To prevent hunters from getting bit, the FWC trains them to catch in a specific, safe way. Here's a demonstration of the safe capture method by invasive species coordinator Michaela Spencer.
I went to go capture her. I pinned her head, and when I went to go pin her head, I kept my end of my hook is that gives me a little maneuverability to keep her from striking at me when I reach to grab her head. I pinned her right behind the head so that then I could go in there with the back of my hand and again avoid getting bit in that front area. And then once I've got her, I just hold her. It actually does not take that much pressure to hold a python. And I hold her just right here, right behind those backbones of her back jaw, and I'm able to then keep control of the python.
Once captured, the python is placed into a bag. While the live transport of python is illegal for most, contractors can get permits to move them and euthanize them off-site. But once a python is safely caught, what happens to the snake? We'll take a short break now, but when Python Pursuit returns, we will explore what parts of the pythons are used and for what purpose. Plus, later on, learn about the research currently being done and what's next for the Everglades. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this special presentation of UMTV, focusing on the python pursuit in the Everglades. As part of the removal efforts, any python caught must be killed.
They're here through no fault of their own, just doing what they do. So we have no alternative but euthanasia. They can't go back to their native range. They're illegal to keep as pets. They can't go to zoos. So that is our only alternative, but it's very, very important that it be done in a humane fashion.
Well, yes, some people will shoot it. Some people may try to decapitate the snake, and if they do that, there's another process that they have to do called pithing the brain, which ensures that the snake, again, is not suffering. And again, it's just all really about making it a humane and quick method.
Once the python is euthanized, the contractor turns it to the agency for tracking and accountability purposes. This used to be done in person, but is now a virtual process because of the ongoing pandemic.
I set up an appointment with my boss, and I have the pythons outside, and I measure them for them, weigh them, and sex them. I give the location of where they were caught, the time of day they were caught, and that all gets put in their records.
Not every snake has to be turned into FWC, although it would be great if you let us know that you remove them from the ecosystem.
The snakes turned in can be as small as just a few feet, but one in particular stood out. Hunters Ryan Osborne and Kevin Pavlidis currently hold the record for the largest python ever caught in the state of Florida. They caught the record snake in October 2020. It weighed 103 pounds and was 18 feet 8.8 inches long. The size alone made it a difficult catch, but the python was also in water, adding to the challenge.
We weren't sure if we could get a good head grab on her, just given her position. You always want to try to get that head. And because you have the head, you have control over everything. You're not going to get bit. I made the decision just to grab the tail, which was closer to me, and then let Kevin try to work for the head. That was the plan we went with, and we executed it and got her up and under control.
18 feet is a lot of snakeskin, but what happens to it once it's euthanized? Well, say hello to the newest fashion, Burmese python leather.
Yeah, she's big.
Rolled up on a shelf in the Fort Lauderdale living room is the skin of the largest python caught in the state of Florida. It is one of the few snakeskins that python hunter Ryan Osborne has kept. He is a contractor for South Florida Water Management District, and he also makes and sells products made from python skin.
It started just as a hobby. I didn't think it would go this far, but I just started with a few very crudely made wallets, and that was a little over about 3 years ago.
Since then, his business has grown as owning products made of python skin has become more popular. Osborne now makes just about anything a customer can think of out of pythons that he catches himself.
Everything's made, like custom made, and he hand sews everything. Like, it's really nicely detailed. He does a really good job.
I don't stick with just the basics, the wallet and the bracelets and belts. I'll do everything. I'll do hats. I'm working on a football right now.
Osborne says he figured out how to make footballs after a customer requested one.
I just took a regular, official size football and just deconstructed it and made a template.
And Osborne is not the only python hunter who doesn't let any part of the snakes he catches go to waste.
A lot of our contractors do utilize the skins, and they make different products. So we do try to utilize the animals to the greatest degree possible.
And while some hunters like Osborne make their own python products, others sell their snakeskins to people like Brian Wood. He owns a store called Exotic Leather. Wood's best-selling Python products are purses, handbags, and customized car seats. But in 2020, his business slowed down because of the pandemic.
People weren't spending money. So I'm thinking, well, I've got all this leather, like, what can I do?
Pondering ways to use his python skin, Wood had an interesting idea.
I looked at my wife's bra and I said, look, that bra looks like a cover.
So Wood created a special face mask. He now sells python, gator, and iguana face masks along with the usual belts and wallets on his website.
Here we are taking an invasive species, taking it out of, where it shouldn't be, and utilizing it to produce nice, beautiful products.
So, the skin of the snake is being used, but what about the meat? Some hunters say they cook and eat python meat and eggs, but doing so might be dangerous. Studies show it contains too much mercury.
There's a lot of water that comes through here, Lake Okeechobee. A lot of water that runs through here may contain, mercury from all the runoff, from all the farming equipment, and anything that's occurring naturally. So that being said, Burmese pythons are generalistic predators, so they're eating anything from the top of the bottom to the food chain.
Now, the FWC and a few other organizations are doing research to see if python meat is safe for human consumption.
We don't have the authority to say that it's safe for consumption. We have to go through this process of certifying it safe for consumption. We're looking at that now. We don't know what the study's going to come up with, but that's what we're looking at now.
The study is in the collection stage, with hunters sending in samples of snakes they've caught. If all goes well, this could be the next Florida delicacy. I've eaten python jerky and would describe the taste as similar to gator. I've also had cookies made from python eggs and couldn't even tell the difference, so it's not that bad when cooked properly. And coming up after a short break, dogs are joining the group effort to eradicate pythons in South Florida. Will it be enough? We will explore when Python Pursuit returns in just a minute. Thanks for staying with this special UMTV presentation focusing on Python Pursuit in the Everglades. The contractor program has been successful, but with so many Burmese pythons in the glades, FWC is exploring new ways to find them. The Python Detector Dog Team was launched in October 2020 and has caught 4 pythons since then.
You did so good! You did so good!
Truman, a black Labrador, and Eleanor, a poinsettia, search for pythons 5 times a week. When Truman or Eleanor find a python, they alert the handler and get rewarded with a toy. The dogs are trained to stay about 3 feet away from the python to minimize contact.
The dogs bring a slightly different approach to finding pythons in that they're not visually searching for pythons. They're actually trained really to search using their smell. So they're finding pythons that are hidden that we can't necessarily see. Well, that doesn't matter for the dogs. They're going to find that python regardless because they're searching with their scent. It's a team, and that's why we keep calling this the detector dog team. We have the handler, we have the biologist, and then the dog. And they are all working hand in hand because when we actually find a python, the FWC biologist does all of the handling and safe capture of that python.
Dogs can now track pythons, but what else can be done to find them? The Conservancy of Southwest Florida believes they have the answer. In a lab in Naples, Florida, biologist Ian Easterling performs necropsies on Burmese pythons caught by himself and the rest of the snake team at the Conservancy of Southwest Florida.
It's checking the lungs for parasites, checking the guts for any content, so fur, feathers, berries, whatever else is in there, sending those off, and then taking genetic samples.
These pythons were caught using radio telemetry. The Conservancy and research partners have been using this method since 2013.
The transmitter looks like this. It's a battery and then a very strong insulated antenna. It's surgically implanted into the snake. So it's inside of their body. And then when with the cord, you attach the antenna to the receiver.
The team tracks specific snakes, known as scout snakes, to find other pythons in the Everglades.
We have a roster of a bunch of male pythons that are spread all across our 60 square mile study area, all west of State Road 29. We are basically following them around. We're learning about their habitat choices, we're learning about their behavior, and then during a certain time of the year, They are very useful in detecting females.
All captured snakes are then transported back to the lab, alive.
We don't euthanize in the field. We bring every single snake because they're all potential scouts. So for our purposes, a male, an adult male, is valuable because he helps you find really high value targets.
Easterling defines high-value targets as healthy females.
In order to get after the female pythons, which are the breeding unit, the ones that are actually dropping these bombs out in the Everglades full of baby pythons, 60 at a time, at least every other year, sometimes more frequently, you need male pythons to locate those females.
By keeping the males alive for tracking purposes, the team ends up catching more pythons than they would have otherwise.
We have male pythons moving around, zinging to female pythons, and we can remove multiple females per male python. So if you multiply that by however many male pythons we're tracking, we're removing a ton of females.
The pythons removed with the help of scout snakes are prevented from causing further damage to the ecosystem, but they also provide useful information for biologists to better understand the species.
In the end, the Conservancy's effort is learn as much as we can so that we can determine how we can control them, right? So in our area, we're removing a bunch of them as fast as possible, and we are also studying their habits. Any effort involving the removal of an invasive species should include a component of understanding the animal, because if you're just eliminating them and not learning anything from them, that's not going to help you out in the long term.
But the question remains, with so many organizations collectively working to control this damaging species, are the current efforts enough? And are we to expect that Burmese pythons can be eradicated completely from the Everglades? For now at least, that does not seem probable. For the hunters, the more attainable goal is on what they can do to prevent pythons from spreading even more than they have already.
We'll never get rid of them. I know a lot of people think that that's the goal. I think all of us can confidently say the goal is just trying to just control what we can in the areas that we can. I think we all feel that that's alleviating some of the pressure off the native wildlife, at least in that area.
It's really tough for me and for everyone on the team to have to humanely euthanize these animals, but we all remind ourselves each and every time of the big picture, which is saving our native animals. So this is all part of greater Everglades restoration.
I think he's going to be okay.
I think with proper management, this ecosystem's going to be around a long time. It's been here a long time. Nature is very adaptable, and it tends to really take care of its own and survive and come back.
And that was all for this special UMTV presentation about the pursuit to get the invasive Burmese pythons out of the Everglades. I'm Sabrina Ullman. Thank you for watching.